Welcome to GOLT Talk, your podcast for technology and innovation in the legal profession. If you're searching for solutions to revolutionize your legal practice, you're in the right place. 10 minutes pure, actionable product insights from CEOs shaping the future of legal technology. And here is your host, Tom Pfennig.
Welcome to GOLT Talk, your podcast for innovation and technology in the legal and compliance world. Pure, actionable insights from CEOs shaping the future of legal and compliance technology. I'm your host, Tom Pfennig, and today I warmly welcome Lilian Breidenbach, founder and CEO of Pfennig AI, based in Berlin, Germany. Great having you on a call, Lilian.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And congrats on your recent Series A funding, great momentum. So perfect timing. Tell us a little bit about yourself as a CEO, the journey that you started to get Pfennig into the market. Welcome again.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Lily, one of the co-founders and CEO of Pfennig. I've actually been in legal tech adjacent for the past 8 years. I'm not a lawyer myself, but I come from a long lineage of lawyers. Hence why I ended up in the space. My dad is a professor of law. My uncle was a lawyer. My grandfather's a lawyer. I studied anthropology and computer science at university. When I first entered the startup scene, I was always intrigued by systems change through technology. And I felt like there was no better system, or like no more system that was more rigid in that moment than the legal system, right? There hadn't really been much change in the last 50 years. And so I thought it was a super interesting space to work in. So we started in 2018, and that was a different company. It was LegalOS. And I would say it was too early for what we wanted to do, because we always wanted to work on the bottleneck between experts and non-experts, and more specifically in an organization, business teams and expert counterparts like legal, compliance, privacy, etc. Because it's two sides of the same coin, right? On the one hand, it's not just a legal problem. It's because, yes, legal gets lots of requests, lots of them are repetitive, and they're bombarded with these requests, and it can be quite a challenging job because the inbox and the backlog just keeps growing. But on the other hand, you also have the business who's waiting and needs things fast, and which then, causes pressure for legal, etc., and vice versa. So we always said, okay, is there a way that we can look at this more holistically and actually work on that problem rather than just treating this as like a problem for the lawyer? So that's what we wanted to do, and I don't think the technology really was ready back then to really make a dent in this problem, because back then, pre-LLMs, pre-language models, really what you could do was just build software that would help with the work around the work, like process, streamlining parts of the work, creating better visibility, etc. And so the moment for us really was ChatGPT. I mean, for so many. We'd already dabbled with language models before then, but I think when the moment ChatGPT hit, we were like, okay, this is interesting. Because on the one hand, it obviously it works with language, which is like the building blocks of what lawyers work with, but it also is an interesting new interface for non-experts, because that's already how they interact with lawyers. If you're in a business and you need something, you email a lawyer, or you Slack or send a Teams message to a lawyer. And so it mirrored that interface that everybody was already familiar with. And so when ChatGPT came out, I remember we were all sitting in a room, and I think like a few days later, and we just in that moment in that room made a decision that we were going to found a new company, pivot out of LegalOS, and that's how Pfennig came to be. And we decided to build a product from the ground up in being AI first, using this new technology that back then there was not even an API. So it was a gamble that we took.
So for those who have never heard of you and Pfennig, in a few sentences, what is your most powerful use case?
So I wouldn't orient it around use cases necessarily. I would say we take a very different perspective to the problem that we're solving and what the solution is. Because I think there's a lot of, right now, if you look at the space, and there's so many legal AI tools coming out, a lot of them think about, okay, how can I give a tool to lawyers to help them be faster and better? So they log in, they use the tool, they do their red line, or they do their drafting, etc. It's kind of still in the old paradigm of like, here's software that you use. What we looked at from the very beginning was to say, that's interesting, definitely, but does the world really need faster lawyers? Like, is that what we're working towards? Are we just working towards a world where lawyers can churn through more work faster? Doesn't seem like the future we should be building.
Hopefully not.
So instead we said, well, can we build a future where actually, especially in an in-house legal team, so much of the work is this repeat, lower leverage work. Can we build a world where lawyers can hand over that work to AI, and AI can take care of that work autonomously with maybe the lawyers with guardrails, so the lawyers can still check it, but it happens autonomously and almost asynchronously, so that lawyers have the time and space really to focus on the more complex, higher leverage tasks.
Really, that sounds like a kind of agentic AI solution in a much broader sense than we have seen it in the market so far. Is this ultimately the USP of Pfennig?
Yeah, I would say the main USP is that you, rather than Pfennig being a tool you use, because these tools are increasingly becoming commodities, it's more that we're building an agent that uses those tools to complete a work end to end. So you can really give Pfennig, this could be, like you said about use cases, one of the most common use cases that we see is contracts. But in that case, you don't use Pfennig to draft a contract or use Pfennig to review a contract. Instead, you say, you know what, NDAs or supplier agreements, I don't want to see them again. So Pfennig, here you go. You have all the capabilities to manage this yourself. Here's all the context you need from me to do this, playbooks, templates, etc. And Pfennig will invisibly sit in email or Teams or your matter management system. And whenever a request of that type comes in, Pfennig will simply resolve that request using the tools it has access to, and then loop you in where needed. So it might like generate the document and then like review it, and then it can go out. Or it will say, you know, I'm going to take these 3 steps, but then I'm going to ask Mary to take a look at it before I send it to the counterparty. But you can really you can treat Pfennig like an employee that you've hired.
It sounds like a super agent, and it would frighten me, quite frankly, because you're going one step further than having agentic support augmenting my services. You're essentially talking about at least some sort of replacement.
I would say that if we look holistically at what AI is doing to the legal profession, but also to all other knowledge workers' profession, yes, that is the trend we're saying. Rather than calling it replacement, I would say that the jobs are changing. When I talk to in-house leaders, they're saying, well, I don't want my senior lawyers or my lawyers generally to even do this work. Why do I need them to generate an NDA or review a supplier agreement? I need them to go up into the complexity. So it's a displacement of work, not necessarily a displacement of roles.
I think this is really key and hopefully takes the anxiety away because replacement of tasks is very different from replacement of people. And I think that cannot be repeated often enough, that tools like yours are replacing those mundane tasks to empower and enable lawyers, compliance professionals to free up time and dedicate more of that to their clients to really generate unique value. So just going back, contracts you said once, and then we move into partners and competitors. What else? Give me, please, one more most tangible use case that you see in your client space.
The way you build an agent at Pfennig is that you basically create tasks, you assign them to an agent, and then the agent can leverage those tasks to do the work. So those tasks can be pretty much anything. Obviously, we have kind of standard tasks. So that's like drafting contracts, reviewing contracts, answering questions, like policy process questions, etc., filling up forms, approvals, exactly. So you give a Pfennig agent, you don't want it to randomly just do stuff in the business. So you give a Pfennig agent a protocol that it needs to follow for certain things. So it will it knows exactly who to ask for approval, who to escalate to in certain circumstances. It can file things in your matter management system with CLM. It can send to DocuSign for drafting. So it can really take over the end-to-end process. Some of it is like tasks that a lawyer would do. Some of it is just operational tasks that need to happen in the business around this process.
Does this work in small, mid-sized, and also large companies, or would you have a sweet spot in rather less complex organizations?
No, right now we pretty much exclusively work with enterprises, mainly because we're at the very early stage of what's possible with an agentic system. So in order to really make it work at scale, it still needs a lot of testing upfront that we do and like support implementing it. And so we like to work with enterprises who have use cases that are very high volume, where this really makes sense, also commercial sense to implement. We also have some clients in the mid-market, upper mid-market, early adopters who want to leverage these systems. So I think long-term, we'll probably open it up to everyone, but right now we mainly work with larger enterprises.
This is already kind of partners, large enterprises. Anyone on the tech side? Microsoft usually when you have a plugin. Anybody else that comes to mind? And who are competitors?
Because Pfennig is invisible, we obviously integrate deeply into the Microsoft ecosystem. Most of our customers already have like a Copilot running, etc. But it's a bit different, right? Because Pfennig is used for these more specialized tasks that are high stakes, where you need a different level of steerability and auditability that a more traditional or a more horizontal tool like Copilot just can't really give you. It's a nice assistant, but you're not going to give it to your sales team to help you negotiate contracts. So we kind of exist within the in the enterprise ecosystem, also Atlassian or Google or Microsoft ecosystem. Competitors, I would say, obviously there's so many solutions that are popping up everywhere. Most often we coexist. So we coexist a lot with CLMs. We also are increasingly coexisting with tools like Harvey or Legora in an enterprise. We don't really work with law firms, or only very specific law firms who want to give this to their clients. But often we coexist with these tools because the way that senior leaders look at this is that you want one tool to help your lawyers be faster at the complex stuff. And this is great for like a Legora or a Harvey. But then you also want a tool that just takes over all the stuff that you don't want your lawyers to do, where they just should just review the outcome or give approval before it goes out, which is where Pfennig comes in.
Okay, but the big guys are also offering agentic solutions. So isn't there some cannibalization pre-programmed?
Maybe eventually, I'm sure we'll converge. Right now, we're not really seeing it because we're working on very different, these platforms that people are using, and they're great tools, right? I've seen them, I've seen demos. A lot of them are, I think, very well built, and the ROI that you can get is great, but it's a platform that you use. While Pfennig is not a platform that you use. Pfennig is something that you deploy invisibly, and it sits in your Outlook or in your Teams and will do the work autonomously. So very different approaches, usually then used for very different use cases. I think we'll see overlap in the future, I'm sure. But right now, most of the tools that we get compared to, for better or for worse, or correctly or incorrectly, would be something like Copilot.
Good. Okay, I think this brings us already into implementation and pricing. And on the implementation, I wonder, what does Pfennig need in order to deploy its full force? You need policies, playbooks. What is it that makes the engine run?
The first step is to define the scope of work you want Pfennig to own. That would be the first step. And then you say, okay, well, if I would onboard an employee, what do they need to do this work? For example, if you obviously wanted to do drafting tasks, you need to give Pfennig your templates. If you wanted to do review tasks, you need to give Pfennig your playbooks. Or if you don't have playbooks, at least give it the last 100 agreements that you've signed. If you want Pfennig to be able to answer questions, you need to give access to your SharePoint or certain policies or certain wherever documentation is stored. So you basically give Pfennig the documentation, and then you also give Pfennig a protocol, which is mainly just the process that you expect it to follow in the org. And Pfennig can flexibly navigate that process. So, if Mary's OOO, it knows that it can email Ed instead for approval because Ed is Mary's boss, for example. But you still want it to follow that protocol. You don't want it to return the review to the sales team without that approval happening. So you basically give it all of that, and then you put it into your Outlook or into your Teams. The nice thing about Pfennig is that change management is super simple because there's no change management, because no one has to change their behavior. The business runs exactly as it did before. They email the legal team, or they create tickets in a matter management system, or they do whatever. And Pfennig will sit wherever these requests come in. And it will either do the request or triage the request to the right person.
But you need to still help me and maybe some of the viewers here. Let's really imagine a person like me, and as you said, I'm out of office. How do I get Pfennig into my workflows? Is there a plugin that I just toggle on or off? Give us a picture how we need to envision the tool at work.
Okay, so I'll give you two examples. One example is there's maybe a shared inbox in your legal team. We see this a lot. There's legal@companyname.com. Pfennig will sit in that shared mailbox. When a request comes in, it will say, okay, can I do this request? If yes, I'll do it, and then I'm going to send it to Tom for approval. And if I get an OOO message from Tom that says, please contact Mary because I'm out of office, I'm going to contact Mary. So Pfennig will email, and get approvals, etc. Or it will say, actually, this is not a request for me. I'm going to send it to Sven because he does data privacy. Or let's say, okay, you don't have a shared mailbox, you have a matter management system. You use Jira or On It, and you have a front door. In which case, Pfennig will sit in that matter management system. So request comes in, Pfennig will do the request and it will attach it in the matter. It will do a comment in the matter and then say, @Tom, ready for review, already done. But it means that you as a lawyer can wake up in the morning and you see, okay, I've gotten 20 requests over the last 12 hours. 6 of them have already been, like a first pass has been done by Pfennig. All I have to do is review it. And then the other ones were allocated across my team because Pfennig was like, okay, this is not for me, but I know who is responsible.
So I would compare to the brands that you already mentioned where I log onto the platform and play with it, I wouldn't really see Pfennig in my day-to-day workflow. It's invisible working in the background. So who does install it then? The legal ops people, the IT people, not me logging into a URL, obviously. That's a different concept, if I understand it correctly.
Once you deploy it, it's invisible, but of course we have an admin platform that enables the admins to audit the agents, so you can see this is what my agents have done. They report to you, so they can email you once a week saying, hey, this is what I've done, this is what I've noticed, this is some insights that I've gathered from the X amount of jobs I've done. You have an audit trail on the platform where you can give the agent feedback. Agents learn over time, so they have memory, so you can correct it, and then Pfennig will be like, great, I'll remember that for next time. And then on that platform, you can also add a task, right? Like you see Pfennig couldn't do this workflow because it was missing the ability to check your SharePoint if there was already a pre-existing DPA signed. Then you can add that task and say, okay, now you can also check if there's a DPA in your SharePoint. So you can manage your agents as an admin, but in production, you don't log in.
So you have like a control center, people monitoring Pfennig in the background, seeing the feedback, adjusting the use cases, optimizing the workflow, and so forth. So it's really an invisible agent rather than what we see in the market. Those are agentic AI solutions that are branded to everyone in an organization. Okay. How long does it take to get it running?
You can deploy an easy agent like that is easy use case within a few days. If you want to do a larger scope of work, 2 weeks to a month.
But in terms of the precision, if you take compliance, for example, you outsource approvals into Pfennig, you would want to pre-test the performance of the tool. As you said, there is an auditing as well. So is this what you would guide and guard a client with?
So we have a process that we suggest people follow, which is, of course, also includes testing and QA. And then eventually it goes live. But going live again, most people there will always be a human in the loop most of the time from the in-house side. There's very, very little risk involved because Pfennig will just do there'll be like a junior colleague that does the work, but you still approve it.
So 2 more things. If I did not want to go into the big platforms, theoretically, could Pfennig offer the same type of solutions that you see with those bigger players? Or where are limitations, if any?
There's obviously some overlap, but I would say that a lot of those solutions are still catering to more complex problems that Pfennig doesn't tackle. So what we really look at is all of the 50% of work that comes in that's repeat, that's lower leverage, that you would as an enterprise traditionally outsource to an LSP or to a managed service. And we also have a lot of conversations with people. They're like, cool, I have this managed service or this internal shared services center. Can I use Pfennig agents to supercharge that? Right, so this is the conversations that we're having. Pfennig is not used to review, to help you with drafting SPAs or doing M&A transactions or complex research or regulatory and thinking about product compliance, etc., which is what a lot of these platforms help with, where it's more of an assistant style. That's not where Pfennig is built for, and that's also not where Pfennig excels.
Pricing, Lily? What would I need to shell out for the license?
It depends on what scope of work you want to cover. Price based on number of agents and work done, pretty much. So it's not seat based because usually, if it's invisible. So if it's behind a mailbox, everybody in the company technically has access. So it's not seat based. It's based on number, work done, similar to maybe how you price a managed service.
Okay, so I'm a company with 25 lawyers. I need 5 agents. What would I have to calculate floor, ceiling, roughly?
It depends what kind of workflows you want those agents to do and the volume of work that goes through those agents. It can range. It's all I can say. It can range between 50K to 500K.
Okay. And what is the most expensive use case?
Well, we have some companies that come to us and say, I don't know, 8,000 of these types of agreements a year. I want them to all be drafted and negotiated by Flank. That's a pretty big use case.
Yeah. That's a massive gain for the client, obviously. So last question, Flank, the name itself. I must ask, there must be a story behind it. Who came up with it and what's the story behind it?
I came up with it. We were rebranding because obviously we had a new product, so we had to rebrand, and everything was trademarked that I liked. So we checked with trademark lawyers and every single one. And we had a launch date set, and we still didn't have a name a week before the launch date. Everything else was ready except for the name. And I was in New York in an apartment in, I forgot where, somewhere in Manhattan. And I had used AI, I tried everything, nothing was working. And suddenly in my Airbnb, I saw a dictionary. And I picked up the dictionary and I just read the dictionary for 2 hours. And I saw the word flank and I was like, that's a nice little short word that's catchy and doesn't mean too much. And it wasn't trademarked. There you go.
Yeah, so I would call it frank and lean. So that's Flank.
Yeah, there you go. Like you could see it like that.
Creativity matters still. Hey, thank you so much. It's extremely insightful. I must say, I have learned a lot. Lilian Breidenbach, CEO of Flank in Berlin, Germany. Thank you for the time.
Thank you
Take
for
care.
having me.
Bye-bye.